world. My name is Max Stein, and I love video games.
I'm the Megabuck. I really love video games.
My name is Raph, and I also love video games.
Hey friends, Benny here. I missed you all, and I love video games.
And welcome to the Game Treasure Podcast, where we discuss treasured video games of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Warning, the Game Treasure Podcast is not for children or anyone with a brain. This week, the Grammys have just happened over the past weekend. Buck came back from Magfest a few weeks ago. If you've been listening to our podcast, we've been talking about it for about 2 weeks, 1.5 weeks, really. We just did an episode on Sonic the Hedgehog, in which we just talked about all of the amazing music that has been in basically all of the Sonic games, even the bad ones.
Yep.
So I was just like, let's just do a video game music episode. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But that sort of opened a can of worms on my behalf, where it was just like, what about video game music? You know what I mean? Like, it's good. Well, yeah, I mean, anyone who probably likes video games probably likes video game music, quote unquote. So there's just like, what songs do we talk about? How do we possibly narrow down the literal decades of music that has been composed? Like, especially at the clip that video games come out now, it's just like hundreds and hundreds of games. They all have music. They're all original compositions. You can't possibly listen to it all. And so it was just like, how do we even begin? And so I was just like,
today is part one in our 72 episode series on video game music.
I think you just go.
I forgot to mention in that this sort of also got started by Buck bringing to my attention the work of this guy named Tim Fallon, who we might talk about at some point in this episode. We might not, but he pioneered basically like new ways to play the instrument that is the sound chip. And it was just like, wow, that's incredible. That's incredibly interesting.
That's a good way to put it, too.
And then once I started digging into just like the origins of music in video games, I was like, actually, there's deeper. We can go deeper than the how people perfected the sound chip. We can actually do my favorite thing, which is deep dive real deep into something incredibly obscure and silly, which is just like, did video games have to have music? Is it not possible that there is an alternate universe to our own, in which, for whatever reason, maybe video games didn't stick? I don't know how that would be possible, but let's just, for the sake of philosophically thinking of something abstract, for some reason, maybe video games are around, but nobody ever thinks they need music.
Oh, that universe sucks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Seriously.
Do video games
so
even
feel
take
sorry for
off
those
in that
people.
universe, honestly?
Right. Do video games even become pieces of art in that universe? Do video
Right.
games become as popular as they do now? Do they unlock their full potential? Is music essential to video games? Yes or no?
I think
So
so.
a lot of questions that I was like, this is the part one. The part one is I'm going to talk about the existence of video games and music. And then every so often we'll just do an episode about some particular composer and the works that they may have contributed to the full body of work that we call video game music. Which leads me to sort of the top of the episode, where we always begin, which is we love to define things. I went to school for public communications, so I love to break down things, their tiniest little building blocks, to better explain and set the table for this whole entire discussion. So let's talk about separating the idea of video game music from the word chiptunes. That's where I want to start.
Okay.
So the sound that is intrinsically tied with chiptune music, if you've never heard it, I guess, I don't know how, you probably have. If you've played video games, you've heard chiptune music. It is a style now of music that is actually sort of hearkening back to something that was really just a limitation, which is when these old composers are making songs, they can only do it with like 4 sound channels using the most primitive version of a synthesizer. You know what I mean? And so it ends up sounding like do 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 do. But now people fully embrace that, and they just have turned this into a genre of music. But why do I find it important to define the difference between these two terms? Well, because I think that if you ask the average lay person what video game music is, they will say do 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 do.
Mario Tetris. That's
and
right.
yeah, they'll be like video game music. It's like beeps and boops. Like if you ask someone, or if you tell someone I like video game music, they'll be like, I don't like that because I don't like the way it sounds.
Maybe 35 years ago, it sounded that way.
Exactly.
Well, like to this day, when you see in movies someone's playing a video game, you hear bloop, 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 bloop,
Right.
bloop. Yeah.
So Mac, why are you pointing that out? Well, I'm pointing that out because what that does when people have this stream of thought is it solidifies a stigma against the genre in general. And maybe in a Joker Batman style fashion, that ironically solidifies the fan base and artist base around this genre to where it's almost like this thing we call video game music is so now intrinsically tied with the idea of chip tunes that it's sort of, in my opinion, feels a little limiting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, if you get called beeps and boops long enough, the people are going to start taking pride in the beeps and boops and be like, yeah, well, it is beeps and boops. And actually, beeps and boops are the best thing. And it's just like, okay, well, slow down. They're not the best thing. But you know what I mean? Like, again, it just creates.
Who's making the beeps?
Well, now I'm just going to beep and boop harder.
Yeah, exactly. It creates
Right,
divisions that I think don't need to be created. So, for the sake of this discussion that we are about to have, I'm going to say that video game music is any music that is created for a video game, specifically as it exists within the context of said video game.
Oh,
okay. 1,000,000%. I mean,
yeah.
Listen, the only people who would not agree with you on that, the only people who genuinely think that video game music is beeps and boops are people who don't play video games.
Exactly.
And it's gaming is so mainstream now. I mean, even before Fortnite, I mean, you had the Halo Bros, you have the early and mid 2000s, every year, every edition of Madden. I mean, there was a line out the door when I worked at GameStop for the newest version of Madden.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft. You've got the Fortnite kids. I mean, there's so many generations that we can actually look to that I think gaming is so mainstream right now that thinking it's still beefs and boops is just naive at this point.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
So chiptune music is a genre of music that is inspired by the sounds of early video games.
It's like a subgenre.
Video game music
for sure
is video game music implies that it was made by a video game composer, just like how you go to a specific kind of music maker to get a composition for a movie.
John Williams is a movie music composer.
Precisely.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just like, go ahead.
Throw something in there, and I don't really talk about this very much. I have a little story for you guys about video game composition. So I'm in high school, senior year. You got to go visit the guidance counselor and do all like the career stuff and, the college and what colleges have you applied for, blah, blah, blah. And, I knew I wanted to go into arts and entertainment in some way. And I actually, I'm 18 years old. I look at the guidance counselor dead in the eye and I said, I think I want to make music for video games.
Oh, dream job.
And she was, and I don't think she knew what to think about that, because this is the year 2020, or this is the year 2001. I'm dating myself, but it was either that or go into theater. It was going to be one or the other, and I think a few things pushed me over the edge, but it was a serious career possibility for me.
Oh yeah,
and I kind of wonder to this day what my life might have looked like if just instead of veering 2 degrees this way, I instead veered 2 degrees that way.
Isn't that life, any? Isn't that life? Though, right?
I would love to peer into the multiverse and see what
go.
VGM Vinny is doing today.
Oh no, VGM Vinny's in the universe where video games don't have any music, so VGM Vinny's out of a job.
He's just a weird freak in his attic, and everyone's just like, "Oh, what are you bothering with those silly electronic chess games?" Yeah. Like, beep, beep, beep.
So sad.
Chess is already entertaining. What do you need background music for
sitting
chess?
in his room writing One-Winged Angel, and nobody gives a shit.
Grabbing One-Winged Angel for a backgammon.
We have One-Winged Angel at home.
Yeah, right.
It's just the soundtrack from the Atari version of Pac-Man.
Bells, frogs, big cherries, Peter Pan, magic cheese.
The point that Mr. Venecor even wanted to aspire to become someone who writes video game music sort of implies the fact that you can get good at this art form
It was a real thing
because
even back then.
specifically, like it's like a thing that you make video game music that could be it could be anything, could it not? If it's tic-tac-toe, the music for tic-tac-toe, what should it be? It could be anything. Okay, this is where I say that this is where.
Oh God, this freaking guy.
Are you glad you came back? Or are you?
Hello, gentlemen. It is good to be here in the year 2025. My name is Max Stan, and video games, they are art. And I dare say to you that video games would be nothing without video game music.
Oh my God, I agree with the art snob.
Mac, Art Snob Mac, I'm convinced that somewhere out there in the world, there's the perfect score for tic-tac-toe. Somewhere floating out in the ether. It exists. It exists. It's out there.
I want to talk about the function of music in video games.
Okay.
So I'm putting this hat on early because I got a
actually
lot
down for
of
this.
really corny, not artsy fartsy stuff to think about that I just want to posit to you, gentlemen. So here is my thesis statement. Much like film, non-diegetic sounds or music in video games can be used in two general functions. Function A, to function in a complementary fashion in service to the aesthetic of the game. So this is not the immersion factor. That would be, in my opinion, more the job of a sound effects department. So think of two games of virtual chess, and they both have no music, right? But then one of them has the sound of the chess piece hitting the board every time you move a piece.
Mhm.
What would you say about the difference between these two chess games? In my opinion, you would say that the one with the sound effect of the board hitting the piece is more immersive because you go, oh, that sounds like chess. That reminds
It's
me
more alive.
that
It's more real.
that is more of a simulacrum of chess because of that sound effect. However, if you have two chess games, neither with sound effect, but one of them has a soundtrack behind it that is relaxing in nature, you would say this is in complementary fashion, or in complementary service to the aesthetic of a soothing chess game. You would say this one is not more immersive, but it has a vibe to it, which is in this instance the difference between playing chess in silence and playing chess to, I don't know, think Balatro, right? The music behind a Balatro. You're like, ooh, what an
That's a good
addition!
point.
What an addition to the aesthetic of this.
Yeah.
Function B is to function in a supplementary fashion. In other words, adding to the meaning, emotions, or feeling of the piece of art, or in this instance, the game in question.
Okay.
So this really burgeons with the action, adventure, and RPG genres, as they, obviously very literally try to just tell a story.
Yeah.
So if you think of a scene in a video game, quote unquote, a scene or a moment in a video game where in which two knights, for example, are discussing the fate of their kingdom, one of them is set to music that is generic horn music that sounds medieval. It's on theme, but it doesn't say anything about what's going on. The other game is set to medieval music that is purposefully composed to sound melancholic, to let you know, the viewer, that this scene where they're talking about the fate of their kingdom is meant to be tinged with sadness.
That's how you should feel.
That's how you should feel. So that is not just adding to the aesthetic of this is a medieval times. That is adding to the information you are receiving as the person ingesting the art.
Mm-hmm.
So Mac, those two things,
that's now a score.
Precisely. Those two things sound a lot like the way music functions in movies. What is the difference? Why are we having this discussion? Well, I would posit that the main difference between its function in movies, that is to say, it is music's function in movies versus games, is that in games, your engagement time is usually significantly longer than in a movie. You will play a game usually for so much longer than you would play a movie. And the second thing that these differ is that the natural interaction of a video game allows for moments in video games where in which music can have a huge emotional impact. Like you like in a movie, when Jack Torrance begins going crazy in The Shining and it starts playing scary music, you go, uh-oh. But in a game, you will choose to open a door and Jack Torrance will be on the other side and then the music will begin playing. You go, oh no, I made the music play. Like it's adds. I think that these are quintessential aspects of video games that music is able to lend itself, because obviously music is older than movies and games. So, but music lends itself to this art form in those two specific functions that in a quintessential way that make video games what they are today. So let's go all the way back, gentlemen. All the way back. So
What year is it? Back.
It's 1940 actually, 1950. There are
no video games then.
Going all the way back.
Before video games necessarily. There is a bunch of amusement shit that makes beeps and boops.
Okay.
Right? Shit has been always
sure.
right. You got like midway and boardway games that go like wanga 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 when you like score a thing, right? Or it's mostly used to make you go, what the heck's going on over there? And then you turn around and you go, oh, it's a game that they're playing, trying to land a quarter on a this and that, or whatever it is.
That's why arcade games have attract mode.
Exactly.
Right. So these are in fact mostly just beeps and boop. There's also like a couple like games that you can play. Like there's a game that's just like that they sold in like 1958 that's just a cathode ray tube that you just like play a shooting game on, but it's huge and ridiculous, and it makes like a sound just to let you know that the game has turned on or that you have just hit an object or whatever. So not really music. So the first video game with music in it is the arcade game Gunfight. It is developed by Taito in 1975, and it features Chopin's funeral march when you get killed. So when you die, it does the So yes,
they just
this
stole
is
music from somewhere else.
They reused music that already had a meaning in the zeitgeist. Everybody knows that is a signifier for death. So while this is music, I would argue that this is still more of a sound effect, because what it is doing is signifying that you've just been killed.
But it was a conscious decision.
But it was a conscious decision. I wrote, nonetheless, this is the first instance of someone saying, let's use music to signify something.
Right.
In this instance, it's you have died.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is where I fell into this rabbit hole, because, gentlemen, I think that shortly thereafter, we see the first instance of video game music. Not in 1980s Pac-Man, but before that,
let's see.
In 1978, Taito's Space Invaders.
Okay.
Famous for being famous, and I, after doing all this research, am convinced that this had a huge contribution to its infamy, is that you may or may not be conscious of the fact that there is a programming error in Space Invaders that made it essentially what it was, which is extremely revolutionary. And that is when when you slowly destroy invaders, the less invaders they are, they begin speeding up their descent. Right. Yeah. That was not done on purpose. That is a number crunching error.
Yeah.
It was also just happened to be basically the premiere of emergent gameplay. Like this is the first time a game gets harder as you play it, like in response to how you're doing. Another thing that changes as the enemies go away is that the 4-note loop of sounds that plays when you are playing Space Invader will actually begin to hold on, let's see it speed up.
There it is.
Whoa. Here we go. Dum 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 dum.
Becomes like Jaws.
This is what I am calling synthetic rhythm.
It sounds like an Autechre album.
So it may be simple music, like it's just dum 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 dum. But as the music gets faster and faster, it is essentially fulfilling function B, and it is creating a sense of panic in you because the people are getting faster and you're running out of time, and the music is getting faster. The music getting faster. So, gentlemen, I think inadvertently, by accident, in 1978, Taito accidentally created music in video games. I for one found that to be incredible. I was like, wow, no wonder it was so like such a phenomena. You know what I mean? People, it has emergent gameplay and adaptive music in it. That's incredible. In
That's a good point.
1978. Next, we've got Rally X by Namco in 1980 is the first arcade game that has background music that plays while you play it. So it's the first game that just straight up,
Oh,
There we go.
that's delicious.
this plays while you drive. This, to me, is in direct service
lot.
of function A, where this is just servicing the aesthetic of the game. The do 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 is adding to, like, I'm doing a fun drive, and I'm glad I put quarters in this game because my little car's doing a fun. Because if the music was just like dun 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 dun, you'd be like, this is a scary
Doing a
drive. You
fun.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So since they add this pleasant music, it, like I said, it serves function A, and it adds a sort of vibe to the game you're playing, in addition to the look of the game. 1981, the year after, we got Frogger and Donkey Kong. Both of them have background music that add to the aesthetic of the game. So basically serving function A. Everybody loves these games. It's a huge fucking hit. I'm going to cut a little bit farther ahead to FM synthesis. So this is tech pioneered by Yamaha for a keyboard. That is basically, long story short, the chip is modulating its sounds, and supposedly Yamaha is saying, like, this sound chip can emulate the sound of any instrument if you just do a bunch of math. You can basically figure out the wave format of any instrument and then attempt to replicate it with this thing. And so all this is to say that we end up getting music that sounds a little bit better. And so it's like it's getting better at being good at serving function A.
It gets
This
better
is
at being
music from Marble Madness, the arcade
yeah.
game.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
So more notes means that you can set a better soundscape for function A.
Is that technically a MIDI composer?
I guess you could say it's like a primitive version of a
Yeah.
MIDI.
I would love to have this as my alarm every morning. That'd be
This
fantastic.
is the
Marble
arcade
Madness
version.
has
This
got
is
some great
when
music.
the teacher rolled in the TV cart in the 3rd grade and played
Oh,
the video
yeah.
about the solar system. That's the music that was
100%.
playing in the background.
Space.
The solar
In a
system
solar
is
system
large.
Exist bodies of rock.
That's so funny.
There are
very
9
hot.
planets.
So,
They're
I
very
could
Pluto
picture
is the
Carl
furthest away.
Sagan saying
Very
billions
hot.
over that. you know.
I'm Carl Sagan.
Carl
So
I'm Leonard Nimoy.
that was Marble Madness using the YM2151 Yamaha sound chip to get people going, dang, video game music can start sounding good. Cut to
That was also
Nine-
David Wise.
1985, and home consoles are a thing. NES, Commodore 64, other consoles, and a lot of video games have soundtracks during their gameplay, and a lot of these soundtracks have begun becoming, since there's more than one, say, sound in a game, they're starting to begin appearing into the function B. So saying something to you. My big example here is Super Mario Brothers has water level music.
Oh, yeah.
So they have stopped just trying to say, like, okay, here's music to set the tone. Now they're saying, all right, so this music is trying to let you know that, like, you're in water. Like,
Yeah.
this is meant to feel watery. So now it's serving both function A and function B, which leads me to a section of my notes that I call the dawn of function B, which begins with like I said, the home consoles springs forth the well of a new type of video game genre, and that is the adventure game and the role-playing game. So now that you have consoles at your house, you're playing games that you pick up multiple times, and the crux of these games is they're trying to tell you a story. So they use different soundtracks to do things like invoke emotions during scenes. I'm thinking Final Fantasy. I'm thinking Dragon Quests. These sorts of things. And then I want to talk about the perfection of dynamic music. In 1991 is an example. Monkey Island 2
Oh.
And even games like Myst is another good one.
Oh,
Where
my God.
basically technology has advanced to where the point where the soundtrack of a video game can now like layer itself in subtle ways. So my Monkey Island example is that like Monkey Island does this thing where you'll have overworld music and it'll be like a certain composition. And then when you walk into a bar without any pause in music, a additional section of music, say a new instrument, will be added to the mix, and then another instrument will get taken away. And it, like I said, there's no pause in music, and so it dynamically adapts the music, doesn't change it. It keeps the same tune that's going on, but adapts it to reflect the emotion of the room or the scene, that is to say, to serve function B. So now games are getting really, really expressive because they don't have to pause. They can just do all sorts of crazy shit with their music. So the music has begun setting tones like for these scenes to be a lot more dynamic, which basically leads us to today. That's like the state of where music, like as far as video games function. Like and the end of my notes. So like now what I would like to do is turn it to you guys one at a time to basically talk about these composers that you have, done some research on, and sort of we can all as a group now reflect on how what they have done contributed, like what their music functions to do for their given gameplay. So Buck, I would love to start with you.
Okay.
Go ahead. What music would you like to discuss today?
There's a lot of video game composers that I like. So narrowing down to one to talk about is really hard for me. I love video game music. Video game music is music. You guys know I go to Magfest. I actually told Mac, I did some quick math. I think between all the different local shows and the Magfests I've been to, I think I have seen just over 75 different video game and video game adjacent musical acts.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I've seen Bit Brigade 10 times.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
They're
But
awesome.
but video game music, it would be the same as someone who really likes classical music and goes to watch classical composers, different things get done, or someone who loves Star Wars music and wants to listen to basically John Williams music as well too, right? So the composer that I chose today is Yoko Shimomura.
Oh,
who,
such a good choice.
If you know video game music, you know who
God.
she is because she's a phenom.
Yeah.
But she's been around since the late '80s. She was a trained pianist, and I wanted to say that word so you guys could make penis jokes.
Perfect.
She was a piano major. She had a job offer to be a piano
major, if you
teacher,
will.
and she said, "Gosh, I really like video games though, and video games are starting to have like music and stuff to them." So she applied at Capcom and got a job working for Capcom doing music for them. Her earlier games, there's an arcade game she worked on, Final Fight. She worked on Street Fighter 2. Most of the tracks in Street Fighter 2 she did the music for, which is absolutely phenomenal.
Incredible stuff.
Some stuff in Final Fight and whatnot. But she really likes classical music. She really likes RPGs. So she wanted to do something along that line. So she was stuck in the arcade division at Capcom. So she took a job with a little company called Squaresoft.
Hell fucking yeah.
I actually learned that
just a
there's
little
one
guy.
song. Yeah. They actually learned that there's one song, Venny, in Breath of Fire that she still did a track for before she left Capcom.
Oh, really?
In the first Breath of Fire for the SNES. So she goes over to work for Square, and basically one of the first, she works on Live Alive. If you've ever seen that just got a re-release in the last couple of years. She did the soundtrack for that. She did Front Mission, the first Front Mission. She worked with another composer on that. But then the first game she got to do the whole soundtrack that was the best, I think, for her was Super Mario RPG.
Yes.
She did the music for that game, including this banger, the Fight 1 against Smithy.
Oh shit! Damn!
Shit slaps.
Pump it up! Pump the jams! Pump it! Yo!
Great tone setter.
Yeah.
Really interesting instrumentation.
I talk about video game music as some of my favorite, I probably would talk about Mega Man music because of the amazing variety of it and the fact there's more than one composer, so you get a lot of different things to it, right? But when you listen to a track like this, you can immediately go, was that from a video game? And the only thing that really says it's from a video game is the technical limitations of like Vinny said, the MIDI style of it. Like if you listen, I purposely had you play the Super Nintendo version of that song and not the Mario RPG remake one that she also did, because that one has, you know, full instruments and real instruments and just sounds like a great track. Right. And
but nevertheless, that track stands on its composition. That is to say, the tempo just as much as the notes. You know,
and the layers.
Where the notes are just as much as which ones they are.
The layers that get added onto that as you're doing that track, right? It just goes, man, this is a great song. Forget about video games or whatever else. This could have been a movie action series or whatever else kind of tempo you were trying to set in that, a car chase or something, whatever. Right.
A boss fight. It's got this high energy, big bombastic sound to it. Yeah.
And that's a good boss fight. Yeah. She goes on to do, she did music for the first Parasite Eve game, Xenoblade Chronicles, 11 Kingdom Hearts games.
Damn.
Right.
And the Road Trip Final Fantasy 15.
I got it. Yeah,
she was the woman in charge.
So she's been
on FF15.
Yeah, she's been doing this stuff forever and still does some contract work for all those guys too. I also brought her up because this ties right into last week when I talked about our Magfest episodes, when I talked about Super Strikers. They are the house band for a Japanese record label called Brave Wave Productions. And she is one of the artists that has been featured with them. This is a Japanese label, and they take artists like her who, I mean, it's not that they're not famous for everything they've done, but some of the oldest stuff they've done, they want them to revisit it. Some of these artists haven't done any work since like the Nintendo or the Super Nintendo.
Right.
And this record label in Japan takes those guys and says, hey, you want to do a remix of something of your old stuff, or do you want to do something new? Just to do a new track because you haven't done any compositions in 20, 30 years.
Right.
And some of this, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because covering this person is just exemplifying the fact that there are people who excel in making music that serves function B. I make shit that sets a tone to a moment in a story. Like really, really. And like those people are just, like you said, not making music because they're just like, oh, I don't know, I was an adult when I was first working, so now I'm old. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, yeah, I don't know. Nobody takes my genre of music seriously for whatever reason. But it's just like, this person's an artist. Yeah,
they can't all be as lucky as some of these other ones that have attended. And she has, though. She has like continued to work. Nice. You know, I mean, consistently for 30, 40 years of a video game music. She's never done anything else since she graduated music school. She's only done video game music since the late 80s.
That's incredible.
Fantastic. Well, that is a fantastic one to cover for today's episode. We'll get to Nobuo Uematsu in a future one, probably. Raph.
Yeah.
Who would you like to cover today, music-wise?
I got two guys I want to talk about. So first, I want to talk about just generally the modern sort of indie game or modern gaming, like especially the AAA space, music scene, music situation. I think a lot of these modern games really are lacking something. And I don't know, it's something intangible, but something about them just really isn't memorable. I was talking to Mac about this last night, talking about like one of the biggest games around is Elden Ring. I couldn't tell you like what the fuck any of the soundtrack really sounds like other than explosively operatic
how
music.
The music goes.
Right, yeah. And I think that Ben Prunty and Eric Brown are two composers that work in the indie space that really elevate the game music space to an nth degree.
And we were talking about comparing it to like music in most Marvel movies, where it's just like I bet you couldn't I mean, you can do the Indiana Jones theme for me at the drop of a hat right now.
That's
but
John
if I were
Williams,
to be like, do the Avengers theme, it's just like,
I don't know,
right,
Superman.
Exactly. So it's just like a difference in quality. People just aren't putting. I can't. Do you know? Tell me. Sing the theme song to God of War 2018 for me right now.
I couldn't.
You can.
Even if you put a gun to my head, I wouldn't be able to. But I can definitely tell you. I can definitely hum the Milky Way from Ben Prunty for FTL, which I actually have that right here. I love this fucking track. FTL was
Nice.
probably the first indie game that I ever played that I actually cared to find out who made the music for it. Ben Prunty, fun fact, this dude used to work at Google as like a database technician. He used to like repair computers when they broke. And he, in his free time, was just making music in DAWs. And then he got approached by the developers of FTL, and they offered him a job, and he took it. And the rest is history, because now he's one of the biggest composers in indie games. FTL Score, it has a way of sucking you in and keeping you immersed in its world in a way that I don't think that its gameplay would have done on its own. FTL is a fantastic game, but I think that it's in large part is due to its music.
There's so much downtime in that game that you really need
a lot of downtime. And actually, it's cool because Prunty makes two different tracks for each track. He makes an exploration theme and a battle theme. The one that I played there now was the Milky Way battle theme, but there's an exploration theme that's very chill and very relaxed. And he does that with every single track in the game.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's if you have Eric Brown, and
it is
Sea of
very
Stars
Eric
having
Brown.
to do two of everything.
Right, he's got the day and night tracks, which these two guys have a lot in common, I think, musically. They both make these big sort of like cinematic sweeping scores that they speak to their influences pretty heavily. I think I read an AMA with Ben Prunty, and he was talking about how one of the tracks for the game, he was heavily inspired by Gustav Holst, the Planet Suite, in particular Neptune. I didn't bring that clip, but you can look up Gustav Holst's Planet Suite. You know, he's got a bunch of famous, especially Mars, the Bringer of War. It's a very popular track from that particular suite of songs. But yeah, honestly, like especially with the FTL soundtrack, his music is grand and sweeping without being orchestral. And actually, in his own words, FTL had a very laser focused style, and that was chiptunes plus cinematic sound minus the orchestra, because he was working basically out of his closet.
Oh, he nailed it.
Yeah. Another fun fact is that he literally did all the sound design for that game. So anytime you hear one of like your crew members die and scream, and it's the male voice, that's him screaming. Anytime you hear a female like crew member die, that's his roommate. He recorded them in his closet.
Wow,
that's great.
Which is insane. Yeah,
that's
exactly. So and that guy actually, he made enough money off of the sale of the soundtrack that he would just quit his day job at Google, and he ended up just making music full time for video games, which is fucking my dream, really. It's just the cool, like I was talking about, they had the two different themes, the seamless transitions between the exploration and battle themes, the chef's kiss, in my opinion. He's got a lot of influences, Hans Zimmer being one of them, moving on from FTL to Into the Breach. I actually like Into the Breach better, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite games ever. But if you want to pull up that Hans Zimmer track Mombasa from the movie Inception, you want to play that real quick?
Yes.
We've all seen Inception. We've heard this music before, right? Yeah.
Classic.
No.
Yeah. You haven't seen Inception? Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Great movie. But
I've heard.
Then go ahead and play, I think it was Antiquity Row was the one that I sent you. You can kind of hear the similarities here. There's this, it's a very cinematic sort of, it reminds me of Pacific Rim or something like that. You know, that game feels like Pacific Rim in as far as like a strategy game, and he really captures that feel really, really well. But I want to move on now to Eric Brown, because Eric Brown, I think, is just that guy is the chef's kiss when it comes to making video games.
Do me a favor. Do me a favor. Tilt your mic so that you can shoot right in.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll just kind of turn my head into it right now. But yeah, no. So Eric Brown, he actually, I had a hard time finding a lot of information about the guy online. He doesn't have his own Wikipedia page, and it's very funny if you look at the Sea of Stars page. Obviously, was it Yoshinori Mitsuda? That's the guy that did the music for Chrono Trigger, right? Yasunori Mitsuda got his own Wikipedia page, but then Eric Brown doesn't. And Eric Brown actually did most of the music for Sea of Stars. He's obviously inspired by film and video game soundtracks of the 80s, because this guy's whole thing is chiptunes meets synthwave. Like, just he's got that synthwave sort of sound like down packed.
That's a good point.
Obviously, his work on Sea of Stars is heavily inspired by Chrono Trigger, which he says was the first game that he ever played where he felt like the music was connected to the game design. That's Chrono Trigger's main battle theme.
We did an entire episode comparing this game to Sea of Stars.
Yeah, exactly. And then for me, it's funny because this is like the main battle theme, but it doesn't actually like connect well to the main battle theme from Sea of Stars. I think it sounds a little more like Elite, Encounter Elite, which is kind of one of the boss fight themes. Yeah, Encounter Elite. This is one of my favorite songs in the entire game.
Oh, yeah, so good.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let
this game's music is fucking off the charts. It's so fucking good. Yeah. Oh man, the vocals,
and then this right here. Yeah, right there.
God damn, that's so good. Goosebumps. Give me goosebumps.
Same. Like he obviously with his he does nostalgia really well, and he captures like this like JRPG sound very, very closely, which
yes,
a lot of modern composers don't do very well. But it's funny because like you listen to like the stuff that he's emulating, and he does a lot of the same things. Like Yoshinori Mitsuda, we got that city pop sort of funk sound that was pretty contemporary at the time, and then this guy's doing this sort of synthwave sound that's kind of like very contemporary to now. There's this whole like synthwave movement that exists now.
I'd say that's the most relevant contribution of these two composers, is that they're sort of doing different stuff with the genre of chiptunes. Like they're pushing the boundaries of what instruments can be included in those types of music, and what those types or what that music is inspired by. Like it's no longer just other video games. Now it's inspired by, like you said, movie soundtracks and all sorts of different stuff.
Like Eric Brown himself calls it SNES++. What he talks about the way he worked on the score for Sea of Stars, because he obviously has access to more sounds than they did back in the day. Real quick, I also want to compare a song from actually Final Fantasy VII. He's got like obviously influences from all over. He, like Nobuo Uematsu, can go from this like sort of like heavy rock soundtrack with synthesizers in it to a more somber orchestral arrangement. So if you want to go ahead and play We Shouldn't Be Here from Sea of Stars. Doesn't this sound like something from Final Fantasy VII?
It sounds like something from 5 and 7.
Or really a lot of Final Fantasy games. After this, I'll have you play On That Day 5 years ago. And that sounds very, very familiar. You hear it, and play that one.
Sound like the future in Chrono Trigger 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the vibes are all there. It's funny like how he obviously was so heavily inspired and like almost paying homage to these guys, that when I'm talking about these two composers, I just gotta say, like Prunty and Brown, they both do what a lot of modern AAA composers don't, and they make these beautiful, engaging pieces that are also complementing the gameplay, and they elevate their respective games to a space that I think makes them artistically valid and memorable.
Let's fucking go.
Boom. That's my point.
Let's fucking go. Art snob. All right, Mr. Venacore, go ahead and take us home with the musical phenom you would like to highlight today.
I sure will. And let's save Nobuo Uematsu for another day. Honestly,
or an entire episode.
Got a whole episode.
Because I mean, obviously, he's mostly known for his work with Square Enix, especially Final Fantasy. I mean, he's just he's the top dog, I think, in most people's vocabulary of video game music. I think if you asked 100 video game fans out there, name one video game composer off the top of your head, I think the vast majority of them would name Nobuo Uematsu, no question. So I think we can put him on his own little back burner, and
his body of work is just so large that it would take an entire episode alone just to talk about it all.
His extracurricular activities are also quite fun.
Oh my god, that's right.
We can get on that as well.
Yeah,
Black Mages, the Earthbound Papas, etc. But today I want to talk about a good old American boy from Keokuk, Iowa.
Oh.
And this is Jeremy Soule. Jeremy Soule is the composer probably best known for his work in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, the Guild Wars games, and a few others. Fun fact about Jeremy Soule. So this guy, in the 90s, he submits a demo to LucasArts and Square, right? And this was his big break in the early 90s. He's convinced that LucasArts never even looked at his demo because they have a no unsolicited packages policy. But like immediately he got a response from Square, and they promptly, 2 weeks after hearing his demo, put him to work on the score for Secret of Evermore.
Wow.
Oh,
Awesome. And I love that
whoa,
game
what an
so much.
interesting.
Fucking amazing. I didn't
It
know
makes
this.
so much
Isn't that
sense.
wild?
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
The
We need
first
someone for
open
that.
world, quote unquote, RPG kind of,
Right.
you know what I mean? In a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Uematsu's busy. We need someone for that.
That's
Right,
so awesome.
right. It's interesting that they tapped an American guy to do the score for Secret of Evermore as
What an
well,
honor.
which was kind of
Interesting, yeah.
unheard of at the time, if you really
Yeah.
want to think about it. Um, Probably though, where Jeremy Soule really kind of, I think, came into his own style and like what he was then best known for, and really hit the ground running. And this wasn't an incredibly popular game, but it kind of defined, I think, his niche, and kind of set him up for his next projects, in my opinion, going forward. Was he did the entire score for Icewind Dale, the original Icewind Dale Dungeons and Dragons game, the
Oh,
one that came
shit.
after Baldur's Gate. I think it was right before Baldur's Gate 2, or right after Baldur's Gate 2. I can't quite remember. But regardless, he did the entire score for Icewind Dale, and then shortly after that, he was tapped on the shoulder to do the score for the first 5 Harry Potter video games, which
Oh.
has that very
Wow.
which has that very orchestral,
Similar
that
feel,
very
right?
immersive, similar feel. Exactly.
Very much his
And that
style.
to me is what really makes this guy special, is that that form B that you talked about, Mac, when function meets immersion.
Mhm.
I think Jeremy Soule does this better than, in my opinion, any other American composer that I could think about, just because of the sheer grandiose level of immersion that this guy helps achieve with these video game scores. And I think that the first time most of us heard him, even if we didn't know who it was Elder Scrolls Oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably, if you think about it for a minute, come up with some of that very like soothing open world or town theme from Oblivion in your head. You could probably dig it up, because when you think about what Raph was talking about, like you couldn't even hum one theme from the
Yeah.
Avengers or Captain America or something like that.
Right.
But you hear those like medieval harp strings. Yeah, you can think of Oblivion, you can hear those medieval
Yeah.
themed harp strings in your head.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of comes back. And then Skyrim. I mean, Skyrim has one of the most beautiful open world scores, I think, of any game ever.
Secunda, man.
It's true.
Secunda, that song
And
is
it needs
amazing.
talk about putting a bunch of effort into making dynamic music in that
Yeah.
game. Holy
Definitely.
shit. Yeah.
Definitely.
It's funny, we were joking a second ago about like how suddenly like you'll hear like the boss music or whatever, and like that's Skyrim is the game that's the meme, you know, like you hear the
You're like, oh shit, somebody's
like,
trying
wait,
to
what's
fuck me
happening?
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Information is being given to you on top of setting the tone of you're
Right.
in a cool fantasy action world, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I think he really hit one of the tops of his career, and that was the in the 2010s, when he did the score for Skyrim, and then directly after did the score for Guild Wars 2, which is how he came onto the map for me. Is he did the score for Guild Wars 2, and I happen to play that game quite a lot. And Mac, I sent you a piece from that if you listen to this without any prompting, you would think it was Skyrim, but it's not. It's actually for Guild Wars 2. And Guild Wars 2 is one of the only games, I think, other than Final Fantasy 14, that literally you can just sit your character in an MMO world and just walk away, and like somebody would listen to what's going on your screen or on your computer. If you had speakers, it'd be like, what is that? Are you watching a movie upstairs? Right. You know, what is that? No, that's point. Guild Wars 2. That's actually from a video game. And it kind of blows people's minds. I mean, I've had that happen multiple times. People have asked me,
like
what
it
are
could
you
be
listening
right
to?
in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, you know?
Right.
What I mean?
You could have inserted half of this stuff into Lord of the Rings, and nobody would have ever known the difference. And I think that's a big feather in the hat of Jeremy Soule. And it's to Buck's point, where, you know, video games are just one small adjacent step over from music scores and movie scores and movie soundtracks.
Right.
it's not any different in my opinion, except for like the level of interactivity and like to your point, Mac, the level of the amount of time that you spend on these things is vastly different, movie versus video game.
Video
Right.
game
But
soundtracks have many more tracks than movie soundtracks usually do.
yeah, this is
Metaphor
very true.
Fantasio had like 80 different
Oh my
tracks.
gosh.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I would bring up Sega Sound Team too, but I mean, we don't even have time for that. I mean, that
Yeah,
that
they
that
are their
studio is just
own other amazing, gold mine of information and history.
exactly.
But I think that is a fantastic stopping point for today's discussion on video game music, or in other words, the function of music in video games. All right, so let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll do our What Else You Got and just go ahead and finish up our episode. Be right back.
Sunday morning goes to the Grammys. Here again is Jane Pauley.
Tonight's Grammy Awards will feature a brand new category, Best Soundtrack for Video Games. Music that Connor Knighton tells us has come a long way. A very long way.
Okay, brothers, what else you got for me today? Listen, I didn't get to really play much. I'm not going to talk about Ninja Gaiden because that's all I've been playing, but we're going to do a whole episode on that next week, comparing Ninja Gaiden 2 with Ninja Gaiden 2. And I've mostly just been doing a bunch of homework for our second episode of our UFO 50 deep dive.
Nice.
Which we are going to record right after this.
Okay.
I beat Golfaria begrudgingly.
That stream was so painful to watch, dude.
Oh my God, I was like, I know this is cringy, but I don't give a fuck. I hate this fucking bullshit. Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah. But yeah, so no real what else.
If you don't have a salt stream, you are not a streamer. So
yeah,
it was bound to happen sooner or later, Mac.
I'm sure every once in a while people like the schadenfreude of watching me suffer or whatever. It's, you know what I mean? Like,
it really does happen. I can think of multiple instances where I'm like, I'm being really salty and like probably not very fun to watch right now, but damn it, it's
am
real,
I?
And it's real and it's raw.
Yeah,
and it makes you well-rounded.
Hey, listen, I explained what was frustrating about the thing that I was playing. Okay, I'm putting it in black and white for you. No. But yeah, so just that I don't really have a what else you got that I can bring today because, like I said, I'm saving my opinions on Ninja Gaiden Black, which I have a bunch of. I'm loving it for next week's episode. So, Buck.
That's Keiji Yamagishi. He did Ninja Gaiden and Tecmo Bowl soundtracks.
Oh,
let's fucking go.
Both games I love. Buck, what else have you got for us this week?
I am continuing my trend since it's technically February now, right? And I have played another FMV game, Simulacra, and it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, he was telling me about this one. It sounded like
this is the one. This is an older one. There's like 4 of them now. I can't vouch for any of them, but the first one right now. But it's that game where this girl's lost her phone and you found it, and no one can find her, and her friends are texting, and so you're answering their things and saying, I don't know, this phone just showed up on my doorstep. It basically is like a puzzle game in disguise. Like, oh, get into her such and such social platform. Forget password. What's her cat's name? Go through her photos, find a picture of her cat, and like there's a sign with the cat's name. And so it's like a puzzle game in disguise, but it's also a horror game.
Oh,
which
my.
I did not know when I first started it. And it says play with headphones, better experience. So I did. And I'm on a work trip and I'm in my room playing this. And at one point, literally, and I was like, was that?
Oh, man.
I can't even tell if that was a sound. I literally ended up getting up and checking the window because it was such a good sound effect. It was just the game fucking with me.
Whoa.
And there's these just jump scare scenes and things that happen. And it has, and it's some already, I'm only about an hour into it, and it had an inscription moment, Mac, where it asks you, remote phone wipe, and it jump scares you, and it's got a countdown timer, and you have 2 minutes to answer these personal questions about her. And if you haven't really been paying attention, which is hard, like, what's the name of the company she works for? And it's like, shit, I don't remember.
Right.
The phone wipes itself. I'm like, oh, it must be game over. The phone starts back up, and it says, what is your name? And I'm like, oh, the girl's name's Anna. Okay, Anna. And the game goes, no, what is your name?
Oh my chills. Oh my. That's
game.
horrifying.
It's
Yeah.
been fun, so I'm
Wow.
gonna try and beat this one because it's not super long.
Fantastic. What was
the
the name of that again?
That is Simulacra, the
Simulacra.
first
Cool.
one. And the second one, I'll just like mutually share with Vinny. We're sending orphans to the moon because Fuga 3 got announced, baby.
Yeah, baby. That's what's
It's
Oh,
gonna
going
be on the moon.
Something about I don't know. There was a time jump at the end
The
of
teaser.
2, I think. I don't
The
know.
teaser is very interesting. And
Ah.
to be very honest with you, I would not watch it. I would not play the teaser for Fuga 3 unless you've played the other 2 games, because
Which is the same for the teaser of Fuga 2. Like, it's
Fuga 2, yeah.
spoilers
Yeah,
galore.
seriously. Yeah, we could talk about that one separately, Buck. But
Yeah.
do yourself a favor. Don't watch
Fuga,
the teasers.
the strategy RPG where you treat kids as giant bullets.
Yeah,
Yes,
basically.
correct. You were the one that originally turned me on to that, and then
Yeah.
you didn't like it, and I ended up
It's
loving
I
it.
ended up not
freaking good.
finishing it. Yeah, too much social interaction parts.
They're all not very long though. They're all like 12 to 15 hours long. The first
yeah,
2.
that's true.
The second one's longer.
A little
Definitely.
bit.
Raph, what else have you got for us this week?
I'll be honest with you, not much. You know, I did a lot of research for this episode and did a lot of research for the UFO
Good stuff.
50 episode. You know, I bought my tickets for my very first Bit Brigade show.
Let's
Uh,
go,
oh,
dude. I
yeah,
will
good.
see you there.
Hey, hell yeah,
Yep.
bro.
Yeah, I've never
If
been
you
to
don't know
see 'em,
Bit
so,
Brigade, they.
what's that?
I was just gonna say, if you haven't heard of Bit Brigade out there in the world, it's these Bit Brigade. It's a band that plays the music of a video game while someone else plays the video game.
One of
Right.
the members of their band, Noah
I'm really
McCarthy,
excited for
is
it.
a member of the band. He plays the game. The band plays the music for the game.
I
cool.
see.
So
Yeah.
they've always done NES games. I've seen them do Metroid, DuckTales, Batman, Castlevania, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, all these.
Yeah.
They just upgraded their bits. They're now doing Super Nintendo games. I just saw them at MagFest, and the tour we're going to see, Raph, that's them doing
Incredible.
F-Zero and Super
Right.
Mario
Yeah.
World.
Yep. I saw. I'm
That'll be fun
excited
as
for it.
hell. I'm
gonna
really
go that
one as
excited for
well.
this.
You got to go. All right.
Yeah, no, you know, other than that, honestly, I finally got to play Virtua Fighter 5 Revo because that came out and I hadn't gotten a chance to really touch it, and I'm having a good time with it. It's got a few issues with its rollback netcode, but I'm hoping they'll fix that soon. And then I think I mentioned this last time, but with the weird recording schedule this week, you know, I streamed Doom 2016 last week, and I had a pretty good turnout for that. I actually had quite a few people watching it.
Cool.
They announced a release
dude.
date for Doom Dark Ages. So, but yeah, I was like, you know what? Let me just play Doom 2016. I haven't played this
Yeah.
in a long time, and I'm like, holy shit, this game is fun as fuck. Yeah, I had a really
It
good
is.
fucking
It's a
time
great
doing
game.
It
it.
The
is.
last 2
Yeah.
Doom games have been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's
Yeah, the
it. That's
new ones
it.
are
That's
good.
all I got this week. Didn't do much.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Venicor, what else have you got for us this week?
Holy cannolis. So between the last time I was here and now, a lot has changed for me. We moved into our new house, guys.
Yay.
All right.
It's finally a thing.
Thank goodness.
I mean, some finishing work still going on, but we're in there. We couldn't be happier. Since then, we also got my first pinball machine upstairs, Guns N'
Nice.
Roses Limited, the Limited, and Buck and I have both committed to the D&D machine as well.
Oh,
That'll
yeah.
be coming soon. But
Hell yeah.
this week specifically, we got the desk upstairs. That means that the Twitch channel is officially coming back online within
Thank
the
God.
next week or two. So
Fantastic.
check me out on Twitch, Mr. Venicor on Twitch, and I played my first games of Marvel Rivals this week.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Oh.
And it is so polished for such a young game. It has that early Overwatch vibe, like Buck said. I mean, he was 100% right. And gosh, it's a lot of fun. I want to play some more. So
Who do you like playing as so far?
I've only gotten to play like 2 or 3 games so far, and I did all the tutorial characters, but I really like Rocket the Raccoon.
Mhm.
I want to try Mantis. I like supporty kind of characters in those kind of games. When I played Overwatch, I liked Moira and Zenyatta and Mercy. They were my favorites.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to trying more of the tactician or whatever they're called, strategist role.
I
The
think
cool thing
that's-
about
yeah.
the healers in that game is they're not really healers; they're support. Like they
Right.
have
Yeah,
neat,
it's
fleshed
great.
out rules.
It's fantastic.
Rocket
It's
Raccoon
really-
is my favorite healer.
He's pretty.
I
good.
love Rocket. Wow, he
he
reminds me
kicks
a lot
ass.
of Moira from. Reminds me a lot of Moira from Overwatch. I loved her. So
nice. So then we get the return of full Venny for the streams too. For the
Yeah.
podcast too.
I'll
yeah.
be,
Right, with the background and everything.
yeah. Well, that's still in the works. We don't have all the bells and whistles ready
get there.
just yet, but we're gonna be rebuilding quickly. So
as the podcast just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube.
That's
Oh, baby.
right.
How about that, boys?
That's right. I forgot to mention that. That's
Wonderful.
right. That's a perfect segue into the end of our episode. That's right. This is the end of today's show. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Do us a huge favor, like and subscribe, please. Like Buck said, we just hit over 1,000 subs on the channel. I'm going to be honest with you, audience. In order to get monetized, you have to have something like 3,000 hours of watch time. But
We're
if you have
25%
1,000,
of the way there.
if we have 1,000 subs and we put out over 50 episodes, we should theoretically, if everybody's watching, be there already.
Watch
Just
to the
saying,
end, please.
watch the episodes on YouTube. Pretty please.
We should have said that at the beginning, not the end.
Watch the whole thing, guys. Watch the
Head
whole
on
thing.
over to our YouTube channel, subscribe. You can also catch our live streams there. Like Buck mentioned, I got the stream on Wednesdays. I'm playing the Baldur's Gate Dark Urge with an improv comedy friend of mine. So we're always cracking jokes. You can watch me become suicidal as I'm trying to beat Golfaria on Saturdays. Raph plays his scary games on Sundays. So yeah, go check us out there, please. You can reach us via email with any questions, comments, or games you want us to play at gametreasurepodcast@gmail.com. You can head over to our merch store where you can find the King of Video Games mugs and t-shirts and the bread shirt and a whole bunch of really fun merch. And finally, and most importantly, you can head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/thegtp, where if you become a member, you will gain access to our exclusive content. Right now, we have the UFO 50 Deep Dive series on there. Like I just said, we're about to go record the second episode of that. So that second episode will be up by the beginning of February, which is now, according to this time dilation. So go ahead and listen to that. That is a kick-ass series we've been doing. It's if you liked how intricate I got covering music today, you'll love that. You can find links to all that stuff and more at our linktree/thegtp. We want to thank Crunkwitch, the band, for the use of our theme song, Clash of the Droids. You can find them on Apple Music, Spotify, and anywhere you can find music on the internet. And of course, lastly, we would like to thank RetroGameTreasure.com. Owned and operated by the Megabuck himself, Retro Game Treasure is a subscription service that sends you custom boxes of retro video games every month. That's right. No more hassle with hunting, no more price gouging, no more overhead, price being passed on to you. No more guessing if this game's even going to freaking work when you bring it home. Instead, you go to www.retrogametreasure.com, sign up for one of the subscription tiers, tell them what video game systems you have and what genres of video games you like to play. Then, at the end of every month, you will get a custom box of video games sent to you for you to keep that will be comprised solely of video games that you like and can play immediately, right out of the box. Guaranteed, refurbished, guaranteed to work. So, start collecting retro video games the easy way today with RetroGameTreasure.com. That does it for today's episode. Until next week, my name is Max Stein. I love the Game Treasure podcast. It's so bad.
It's so bad.